we just want to summarize and further exemplify some of the issues we've raised so far. Whether or not this is utterly persuasive is maybe in doubt. Depends on how predisposed you might be in the first place to consider the idea. But this morning I want to give you a bunch of other ones just to round it out a little bit. You don't need to turn to it. I'll just read it to you. If you want to, you can. First one we'll start with is in Zechariah, a minor prophet at the end of the Old Testament. And it is Zechariah 9:9. And this is a prediction of Palm Sunday in 487 B.C. Again, how does Zechariah know anything about Palm Sunday in 487 B.C.? But let's just look at it. It says this: Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion, shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, he is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon an ass, and upon a colt, the foal of an ass. So you say, oh, well, that's not very definite, but then we look at Matthew 21 and verse 10. Matthew 21:5 says, Tell ye the daughter of Zion, Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek and sitting upon an ass, and a colt, the foal of an ass. The situation was, they'd come into Jerusalem, and he sent his 2 disciples to go into the village and to find an ass tied up. And they were just to take it. And if anybody questioned them, they were to say, The Lord hath need of them. And Matthew says, he's quoting Jesus, but now he says, All this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, saying, Tell ye the daughter of Zion, Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek and sitting upon an ass, and a colt, the foal of an ass. What we have here is a third case. First, we had objective confirmation. Secondly, we had subjective confirmation. Briefly, objective confirmation is when the event was predicted, but nobody could have set it up to come true, like the soldiers gambling for Christ's throat. That couldn't have been set up. Now, the subjective confirmation is one simply where the writer of the New Testament goes back, and he finds in the Old Testament text something that he interprets as having come true. But this is a third case, because this is neither of those. This is what you call a setup. Jesus consciously goes out of his way to identify himself with the prediction in Zechariah 9:9. He sends his disciples to get the materials so he can fulfill the prophecy. So I don't know quite what we should call this. Now see, he does this. See, he does this. He makes this happen. So it's neither objective nor subjective. It's what you could call prejudicial. It's fraudulent, right? Anybody could have done that, right? Now, we don't want to call it fraudulent. We want to call it conscious fulfillment and identification of himself with the prophetic Messiah who is to come. Interesting. You know that that's one of the arguments that's always given in regard to whether or not Christ is the Son of God. It's this. Either he's crazy, because if one of you went around saying that you were the Son of God, what would we do with you? Down to Terrell. Okay? Either he's crazy, or he's who he says he is. Because what are you going to do with somebody like this, who goes out of his way to identify himself with the Old Testament Messiah? Very difficult. So here, what are you going to say? Either he's a madman, or he's who he says he is. And if he's who he says he is, we don't have to go any further. Let's look at the next one, Zechariah 11:12. It says this.
Is that 12 or 2?
Mm-hmm. Should be 12. And I said unto them, If ye think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver. We know that refers to who?
Judas.
And the Lord said unto me, Cast it in unto the potter a goodly price that I was prized at them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord. And we remember that Judas was buried Potter's field. Now this one, which is it? Is it conscious, subjective, or objective confirmation? Because in the New Testament, without a whole lot of trouble, we can find that it says, Then one of the 12 called Judas Iscariot went unto the chief priests and said unto them, What will you give me? And I will deliver him unto you. And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. Were the chief priests conspiring with Judas to confirm some prophetic element in Zechariah? Probably not. So this is which one? Objective, subjective, or conscious?
Objective.
Objective. Well, it's closer to objective. And then moving ahead, we go to Zechariah 12:10. This one's very interesting. This is very interesting. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications. And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. That is to say, the death of his firstborn. Here, since we've already seen in Psalms 22 a suggestion of his being pierced, you could argue that Zechariah knew the Psalms. Of course he did. And he maybe had gone back and gotten the idea from there. Let's just look at what I have there for the confirmation. See, John has another view of it. He says, so this is the third time we have seen Psalms 22, Zechariah 12:10, and now John 19:37. All of these say the same thing. John here says, and again another scripture says, they shall look on whom they pierced. So he quotes Zechariah. Which is that? Objective, subjective, or conscious confirmation? Yes, subjective, exactly. That's also called what? When a later writer, Christian writer, goes back and finds some justification of his beliefs in previous literature, that's called, yeah, do we all know that? Now let's look at, you might just keep your consciousness on that one we just looked at. They shall look on him whom they have pierced, because at Zechariah 13:6 the same kind of thing arises. Here, though, it says, and one shall say unto him, what are these wounds in thine hands? In Psalm 22:16, it said, they pierced my hands and my feet. Now in Zechariah we have, they shall look on whom they have pierced. Now, how would they be looking on him? What is the implication? What's the picture there? They say they shall look on him whom they have pierced. How do they look on him? Now, I'm just wondering if you get any sense, perhaps, that they're kind of looking up. Right? How high above the ground was the cross? Do we know? It wasn't planted at our eye level, was it? It was somewhat elevated. So maybe there's a sense that they're looking up there. But you see that both of these suggestions in Zechariah 12:10 and 13:6 could be arguably derived from Psalm 22:16, because there it says they pierced my hands and my feet. In Zechariah 12:10 it says they shall look on him whom they have pierced, and at 13:6 it says, what are these wounds in thine hands? Of course, this whole business here is marvelously resonant of things that are just a little bit outside of our periphery of vision. Some good athletes are said to have wide peripheral vision. So if you're playing basketball and you run down the court, you can see the guy right over here, where most people can't, and you can pass to him. Well, in this case, a great deal of Zechariah is just there on the periphery of our vision, which is not quite wide enough to always perceive it. But this whole thing, and one shall say unto him, what are these wounds in thine hands? Then he shall answer, those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, and against the man that is my fellow, saith the Lord of hosts. Smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. Strange, a little bit strange. This whole business is all just a little bit strange, especially the book of Zechariah. But I've saved the most mystifying one to the last, and that is in chapter 14, verse 7 and verse 12. And I have a question mark here because there is no New Testament confirmation of this. Arguably, maybe this hasn't happened yet. Let me read it to you. You tell me what it is that it's predicting, if it's a prediction, which, of course, we don't want to be too sure of. Actually, it's verses 6 and 7. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night, But it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. That's the important part. Then it goes on, and let me read up to verse 12 so you have a sense of the context. And it shall be in that day that living water shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth in that day. In that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. All the land shall be turned as a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem, and it shall be lifted up and inhabited in her place, from Benjamin's gate unto the place of the first gate, unto the corner gate, and from the tower of Haniel unto the king's winepresses. And men shall dwell in it, and there shall be no more utter destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. And this shall be the plague, wherewith the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. Now I'm suggesting that there's one prophetic element here described from a double perspective. The first part is that at evening it shall be light, and the second part is that their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. What are we talking about?
Second part, we're talking about war.
No doubt about that. But what kind of war? Oh, it's so obvious? Who says nuclear war? Why? Exactly. That's what the bomb blast does. That it in fact melts the flesh away. That's right. If you're exposed to the blast, if you're at ground zero or close to it, then what happens is your flesh is blown from your body. So if there's a wall behind you that is somehow able to stand, you have a red shadow of blood left upon the wall, or the red shadow conforming pretty much identically to the shape of the body. So it's one, that's right, it's a classic symptom of atomic explosion. What's this then, how does it tie in? At evening time it shall be light.
I thought in Matthew 23 and verse 44, it implied the fact that the 6th hour in the darkness occurred over all the earth until the 9th hour.
That's not night. That's not evening.
9th hour?
3rd hour, it started.
6th hour.
What's the 6th hour?
That's in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's not evening. That's right. It recalls that. Fine. If you wanted to look at it that way, you'd say, well, maybe you have a point when you talk about the atomic symptom. But perhaps this other thing, in evening time it shall be light, refers to the crucifixion of Christ when the sun was darkened. Perhaps. But let's argue the other point while we're here.
Okay.
Well, if you've got the symptom of the shock, what comes before the shock? The flash. So, if the bomb comes in the evening, what'll happen? It'll be light. Not for long. Maybe so. Of course, you realize that this doesn't happen in Dallas, right? Where is this happening? This is where? Jerusalem. This is Jerusalem. And you understand the situation that exists prior to it, because it says right here, what is it? I read it. You see, it also says at verse 10, interestingly, all the land shall be turned as a plain. I don't know what kind of warhead we're talking about here, but there is a flattening conditioning, right, to significant nuclear explosions. It does tend to flatten things out. How much it flattens it depends upon the strength of it. It also makes big holes in the ground. But the land shall be turned as a plain, and it shall be lifted up and inhabited in her place, and then it gives some kind of dimension to it. And then it says Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited after that, but it has to be some time after that if it's going to be nuclear warfare. The context of this, I can't easily give to you right now, but let me just tell you, the context of this is that Jerusalem is under attack. This is the last battle for Jerusalem. And do you know it well enough to know who wins the battle? What happens to Jerusalem finally? Yes, that's right, it's destroyed. But in its defense, what do the Israelis have? What? Yeah, but what do the Israelis have right now that they can defend Jerusalem with? The bomb. They got the bomb. They got lots of bombs. I mean, atomic bombs. Would they use them to defend Jerusalem? You sure? You ought to be sure. If the Israelis were to use their nukes to defend Jerusalem, who's attacking them anyway? See, this brings together bits and pieces from all over the prophetic literature, Daniel, all the minor prophets, and also it connects to Revelations too. But who's attacking them? The armies from where? Armies from the north country, yeah. What's north?
Iran, Iraq.
Exactly. But what's further north than Iran? Russia. Russia. How many steps removed from reality have we gotten now? But it's interesting that this doesn't ever really stop critics and commentators from speculating that at this time a confederacy of powers under essentially the powers of the North or Russia will attack and destroy Jerusalem. But only after Jerusalem has obliterated what's called the minor armies of Syria, Iran, and Iraq, and other Confederate forces. So it's always, you can always look at the ebb and flow in any aspect of human conduct. So first, Israel is attacked by these lesser forces, and naturally they pulverize them, right? They blow them to bits, as a matter of fact. But then Russia gets into the game, presumably, right? And then they blow Israel to bits. Where's the United States in all this? Background. Yeah, it's not there. It's not there. There's no mention, there's no suggestion that anybody can seem to find that the United States is involved in any of this at any time or place. It's as if it didn't exist. Of course, for the viewpoint of these writers, the United States doesn't exist. America doesn't exist. The New World doesn't exist. This is old world thinking. And that's very important for classicism, because classicism is old world thinking. If you were to ask me what New World thinking is, that would be another subject. But we're studying in the class old world thinking.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said about the level of the field. Does not the bomb work just like, in the major cities? You have these fellows who can use explosions, which cause what they call implosions, cause a building to collapse at, and they show it, I guess it was Hiroshima, that so higher elevations even themselves deteriorated to a great extent.
Is this how every mountain and hill shall be made low? It's a materialistic confirmation, right? When Isaiah says every mountain and hill shall be made low and the rough places plain and straight, he's not talking about the bomb. He's talking about a spiritual fulfillment of that. But always in our ways, apparently, we're afflicted with first and second meanings. That's what we're talking about in all of this. Perhaps there's room for both material and a spiritual interpretation. That would be the material one. Certainly, if a bomb falls in downtown Dallas the next day, say you happen to be out in Mesquite, right? That's beyond the level that you're supposed to be. You can live. And you look back the next day, what do you see? Nothing. It's gone. Is that good or bad?
I don't think it's a question of good or bad. It's something that occurs.
Is it good or bad? Do you want it to happen or not? It's bad. Yeah, it's bad. Now that one, you see, that's why I have the question mark there. Who knows? It's just speculation. Go ahead.
It could be Sodom and Gomorrah, spiritually wicked.
Dallas?
Sure.
I always thought Dallas was a goody-goody town.
No.
Sure.
I don't ever believe it. Yeah.
Well, let's press ahead here and look at Haggai. I'll just do it for you. Haggai 2:6 says, I guess this is further along the lines of what we're just doing. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come. And of course, that's right from Handel's Messiah. And there's a good bit about God shaking the heavens and the earth. Psalm 46 is one, but a great many more you could cite. This probably doesn't prove anything all by itself. But if you wanted to make a case out of Zechariah 14:7 and 12, you might as well throw this in too, right? I don't know why I have Hebrews 12:26 there. No, I know why. Whose voice then shook the earth, and now he hath promised, saying, Yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. And this word, yet once more, signifies the removing of those things that are shaken, as of things that are made, that those things which cannot be shaken may remain. Well, that's a spiritual interpretation.
When you say shake the heavens, you're talking about basically the cosmos. universal concept of what we consider God.
We're talking Greek here. In Psalm 8, we're talking Hebrew. It's very difficult. For example, do you recall in Psalm 8, we looked at the word angel, and we found out it wasn't angel, but it was God's Elohim? Well, that verse is quoted in the book of Hebrews, in Hebrews 1:6 and in 2:6 and 8. It's quoted. And so you'd say, well, if we wanted to know the correct reading of that, all we got to do is look at Hebrews. But it's quoted in Greek. And it turns out that the writer of Hebrews thinks the word means angels too, but he uses it in this sense. It's not angelopoi. It has a prefix in front of it which means equal to the angels. So his point is that Christ is never less than equal to the angels, but also superior to them. So you really can't make much of a case out of the New Testament interpretation in this sense of the Old Testament passage, because he thinks it's angels, but his interpretation of angels is different from what it would have been had it been angels in the first place. I question myself whether or not maybe he didn't read Psalms 8 in the Septuagint or Greek Old Testament version, but why would a Jew writing a letter to the Hebrews quote a Greek version of the Old Testament? So the whole thing is very, very interesting, terribly interesting. That's what you get into when you become, this isn't higher criticism, but it's just criticism, because you have a lot of things that you can't really ever figure out. So it's up to you to make the judgment. My only point here is to ask you whether or not you have any sense. Yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come. When will the desire, I assume you know who the desire of all nations is. Who's that? It's Christ, yes. And he comes how? When he comes. After the shaking, he comes how? In power and glory. Does Christ come before or after the destruction? That's the thing that's just preoccupied Christians. I'm sure you're very deep into this yourselves, those of you who are interested. Is it going to be a pre-tribulation rapture, a mid-trib, or a post-trib? If you don't know what the trib is, just don't worry about it at all. Okay? Is he going to take us out of the world so we don't have to suffer? Yeah, everybody says, yeah. All the American Christians are totally convinced that God's going to take them out of the world so they won't have to suffer. Of course, they never have suffered in their whole lives anyway. But I tell you what, I always just get a little bit suspicious when people agree with me, and I get suspicious when everybody agrees about anything. See? So if they're all agreeing that that's the way it's going to be, and I look at their lives and I see they can live in split level, used to be $40,000 houses, but it's now to $150,000 houses, and they can drive Datsuns and new cars, and they can afford to give away, like Reagan can, was it 1% of his income. The richer you are, the less you give, you know. Then I say to myself, these people are going to be taken out of the world without suffering? It's just a question, right? And it's a relative scale. Like Peter said, who then, Lord, can be saved? Jesus just said, it's hard for a rich man to get into heaven than a camel through the eye of a needle. But Peter said, who can be saved? Because he recognized that he was rich and that you are rich and that I am rich, relatively speaking, to the peoples of the earth who are poor, who are real poor. If you haven't done any traveling, you don't know this, but the least rich area of Dallas, think about it, okay? The least rich area of Dallas is better off than most of Mexico City, where not hundreds of thousands of people, but millions of people live in garbage dumps, and all over Latin America, where I've been. I have not been to Africa. I don't know what the state is in Africa. From the African students I see, Africa looks like it's not such a bad place, economically. I don't know. Who's going to make the statement? All right, go ahead. Where are you from?
From Kenya.
Kenya. Well, you see, Kenya's a real strong place, or at least it was until all those babies started coming. My getting back here, whatever the pre-trib, post-trib realization is going to be, don't you want to suffer a little? You think you're perfect already then? Who wants to suffer? I'm not volunteering on that one.
Most of the concept that they're going to be somewhat the same position as Enoch, who was translated, who did not, of course, suffer death to begin with.
Well, that's the rapture. You're just gone. You see bumper stickers, right? If the rapture occurs, no one will be driving this car.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's great. That's great. But I want to point out to you, just by way of passing, this is really a tangent, this will not be on the quiz, that all of this pre-trib rapture stuff comes from Darby. And you say, who's Darby? Well, I don't know who Darby is either, except to say that Darby's somebody who lived less than 100 years ago. So all of this stuff is strictly a modern theological invention. And the Christians, if you think there were Christians before the 19th century, the Christians who lived prior to the modern era did not believe any of the preached in popular places hither and yon. They didn't. They didn't know about it. This was not a belief. It'd be interesting for us to have a better notion as to what those people did think the day of the Lord entailed. However, that's not even taught in seminaries, you know. If you go to seminary today, what you get is basically a theological view of Old and New Testament literature from 1850 forward. So the greatest preacher of them all in English, you don't even know his name, if you do speak it.
Greatest preacher of all in English?
In English.
Or in English?
English. That's a big area. Of course, this is judgment too, right? I'm just teasing you, but... John Donne. Never heard of him. John Donne. Check him out. You've heard of him. Haven't read him yet, but you've heard of him. The reason why they don't teach John Donne in the seminaries is because they can't understand him. He's too strong-minded. People that watch TV can't read John Donne. Instead of having your neurons next to one another, television produces giant spaces of emptiness in your brains. All of our brains, if you watch television. And so consequently, when you come across a writer who's synapsing from this distance, and your brain synapses from here, you can't read him. You can't read even one sentence. John Donne is terrifically dense. Just one sermon of his you can study for a long time. Very, very interesting stuff. But of course, he's not the only one. Were there Christians in medieval wherever? Yeah. Did everybody know any of them? No. But the truth of it is, they wrote these really vast commentaries on the Bible. I mean, they're just huge. You could get into any library that had a stock of these, and not many do. And just the commentaries on the Bible, they would just go down. There'd be a long line of them down there. There'd be one writer. Nobody knows anything about this. Nobody reads it. Nobody is concerned with it. However, ignorance is bliss. And so we'll all blissfully be going up when the last trump comes, we hope. Again, I'm just trying to shake you a little bit to have you think critically about the assumptions that are made in your time. Why be trapped in a social envelope? Just because 20 million Frenchmen can't be wrong doesn't mean you can't be wrong. That's the bandwagon tactic.
They believe George Orwell.
Who did?
A whole lot of people.
You mean 1984 is gone?
Yeah.
Some people say it's...
They had already made their moves to the various hill countries.
Oh, yeah.
Every place else. A lot of these cities run around here.
Well, they had bomb shelters back when you were young.
Yes.
Zephaniah 3:8. Just briefly here, I want to get to Virgil. Can we find Zephaniah? Yes, we can. He's right before Haggai. Or you say Haggai. Zephaniah 3:8 says, oh, whew, listen to this one. Where am I getting this stuff? It says this, therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord, until the day that I rise up to pray, P-R-E-Y, like a hawk. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour out mine indignation upon them, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. Listen to this. That's interesting, but we've already talked about that. For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord, to serve him with one consent. That's interesting to me. Now you say, okay, it sounds like that's the language that existed before the Tower of Babel. Well, I suppose we should think of it in that way. When's this pure language going to be? After what?
Tribulation.
After the tribulation, and after what after the tribulation? What happens after the tribulation?
Yeah.
The judgment. What happens after the judgment? Well, then what happens after you make it or you don't?
Kingdom on earth.
Kingdom on earth, that's called the millennium. That's called the 1,000-year reign. That's the rod of iron in Psalm 2.
Yeah.
What happens after that? After the 1,000-year reign, what happens?
There's another judgment.
Another tribulation and judgment. What happens?
Years later.
And what happens after that? Destruction of what? Destruction of the earth. And what happens after that?
Everybody lives happily ever after.
Where?
On the earth.
The earth has been destroyed. What happens after the earth is destroyed?
It's a new creation.
A new creation, a new earth, and a new heavens. All right. Well, we got there anyway. Is that when the pure language will be? Okay. I don't know.
Everyone's in agreement. There's one heart, no.
One heart.
Yeah, that means the line lay down by the all this and all the other stuff.
I'm not sure that that's not in the millennium.
I believe in Revelation. I believe what he's talking about when he said one tongue, either all were worship.
All right, that's another phrase. There's that sense. There's one tongue, but here it says a pure language. I point out to you, what is it, Psalm 14? The words of God are pure silver words tried in the furnace of earth 7 times. And there it refers to some kind of pure language there. Whether or not we should put all these together, I don't know. Trying to document and round out the case. That there are often suggestions of prophetic things in literature, some of which we can see that have already happened as it refers to Christ, and others of which now we have no reason to believe have happened, and for that matter, we shouldn't especially trouble ourselves that they're going to happen. And then Micah 5:2, which is one we know. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from old, from everlasting. And of course that's Christ, and that's in Matthew 2:5-12. Now Daniel, I hate to skip some of these other people, but Daniel is the big one for all the stuff that we've been talking about. And what do I have there? Daniel 11:36-38 says this. In my Bible it says the end time. It says, and the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god. Now, you listening? Who are we talking about? Pick it up, listen. And the king, no. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces. Now stop there. Who's this? Not Satan. Antichrist. This is Antichrist. This is all. Don't you want to get into it, or you want to have a little time yet to grow? Are you ready or not? Just curious. Who's ready? For this all to start happening. Back in... Well, it's a good question.
Oh, yeah?
Back, let me give you a little help, okay? Back in Zechariah 12, it said this. I'm looking at Zechariah 12:8. In that day, and that's that day this day that we're talking about. I asked you, are you ready? And it says, but in that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David. And the house of David shall be as God, and as the angel of the Lord before them. So, move to Jerusalem, and you can really get in on the action. I don't even know if America's going to be involved in any of this. Of course, the Mormons think so, don't they? What do the Mormons say? The Mormons say that the New World is one of the lost tribes, so that the New World is going to be the New Jerusalem. Now, Blake thought that, too, about England. Everybody thinks New Jerusalem's going to be in their backyard. If you're not ready, then you can read this verse to yourself over and over and over again, and it will comfort you, because it says, you're saying you're feeble. We're feeble. He that is feeble among them in that day shall be as David. Now, what was David? What's he referring to here about David?
David was alive.
Yeah, that's it. Interesting, isn't it, that when David was weakest, he was strongest, right? And when David grew up and wasn't a boy anymore and could handle the implements of war real well, what did he do with them? When he was strong, he turned out to be weak. He was cutting off people's hands and feet. He was sending his soldiers out in the front of the battle so he could steal their wives. And he was running from his son who led a palace revolution, overthrew him. And he was cursing and being real bitter against his enemies. Poor David. I mean, I say poor David, right? I know a guy who thinks he is David. He thinks he was David. Interesting. I don't dislike the man. I just feel like he's doing it again. When David was strongest, he was weakest. So apparently, there's always this sense here that if you're feeble, that's the best place for you to be, because then you can be strong. But if you're strong, then you're probably going to be weak. You're probably going to go down. So I don't know whether we should be strong or weak here. Of course, there's also a sense in which strength is a positive and not a negative thing. Sometimes weakness is strength, and sometimes strength is weakness, and vice versa, vice versa. But here it's interesting that it says the house of David, and who's that, the house of David? Shall be as God. Who's the house of David?
Messiah.
Christ, Messiah. And who else is the house of David? The tribe of Judah. Judah means what? Lion. Lion of the tribe of Judah. So lions are strong. You didn't want me to bring them. So, in this day the house of David shall be as God, and as the angel of the Lord before them. If you ever get a chance to see this film, go and see it. It's by Luis Buñuel, and it's called La Ángel Exterminador, which means the exterminating angel. Beautiful film. He's a Spanish filmmaker. Made a lot of great films. They're all fine. In the exterminating angel, a bunch of people get trapped in church, and the angels won't let them out. And it's very interesting what happens. They're all very brave. There's some Masons among them. They give them a sonic call for help. But it doesn't work, because the angel has put a line right here. And as all they got to do is leave. They all stop right here. Somehow they can't see anything. Nobody can see anything. But in the film, they stop, because you know that that's where the angel is. And you can't walk past the exterminating angel, also called the avenging angel. What are the angels going to be doing in all this stuff? They're going to be what?
Holy.